It's the WP Minute Plus, your home for long-form discussions with WordPress professionals and industry experts, covering our favorite topic, WordPress. Be sure to follow us. Search for WP Minute in your favorite podcast app. Follow this podcast and our 5-minute weekly edition. Or head to thewpminute.com/subscribe and join the newsletter. I'm told it's like a warm WordPress blanket that gets delivered to your doorstep every week. Looking for all things WordPress? The WP Minute has you covered. This episode of the WP Minute Plus is brought to you by our friends at OmniSend, the top-rated email and SMS marketing platform for WordPress stores. With OmniSend, you'll be launching pre-built e-commerce automations in no time, as well as intuitively segmenting customers based on their shopping behavior and even trying out SMS or push notifications, all from the same platform. More than 100,000 e-commerce brands use OmniSend to drive sales and build better customer relationships, converting their customers with quick-to-create, highly relevant emails and texts. Are you ready to start building campaigns that really sell and convert your customers? Find out more at omnisend.com. That's omnisend.com, OMNISEND.com, omnisend.com. And give your brand the boost it deserves. We're going to dive headfirst into this conversation because I'm super curious about what you're doing with WooCommerce, what it's all about. But I saw your tweet a couple weeks ago where you were like, hey, $50,000 gets you X percentage of the business. Talk to me about that tweet. Remind me what that was, unless you deleted it, but remind me what that was and what it means to you and your business.
Yes. So we're building WooCommerce, and it was a pretty ambitious move. Me and another friend of mine, a developer named Dima, we're working on. And we got to this point where we're like, okay, so we've built something really, really great. I think we know what we need to do to go to market. But I think what we need is a little bit of extra cash. And so it was this sort of, tweet. We've sort of been building in public for a while, so we have a pretty decent sized community. And I thought, let's put it out there, see who's interested. And so I said, hey, $50,000 for, I think, a few percents of North. If you want to help us innovate and invest in us, and let's talk. And so I had a few people reach out to me, and we have some things in the works right now. And so the community is really supportive, and I think looking for not a replacement, but another option for e-commerce in the WordPress world.
That's smart of you to sort of state it that way. I wouldn't want to go up against WooCommerce, but I wouldn't mind being a more simplified alternative. We're going to get to that in a moment. I bet if you put that tweet out 2 years ago, you probably would have had people running over with dump trucks full of cash to drop it on your front lawn. Are you looking to build a traditional sort of, friends and family round, seed round, and then go into that more traditional investment route? Are you starting to explore other accelerators and such, or are you really just taking it more organically as much as you possibly can?
Yeah, so just recently have I started to really start dive into the world of investments. Like I've built 2 other startups and bootstrapped those with my brother and another partner. And so going into WooCommerce, I was like, oh, I can bootstrap this. This is no problem. That's what I've pretty much done for the last year and a half or 2 years of development. And that's all been fine and dandy. And the community has bought, purchased licenses, and we've had some sales, and that's been wonderful. But now diving deeper into what could raising money look like, and how could that support the growth of WooCommerce, and how does WooCommerce fit into the WordPress ecosystem, and then help, with the evolution of the block editor and full site editing and all this other stuff. So I think there's a lot of positive side effects that can come from building something like this. And so now I'm kind of looking at more at this phase of North in terms of where we're at with revenue and stuff, just a more of a casual friends and family sort of round. And that's kind of where we're at right now. I mean, in general, I have some projections in the future of what could future rounds look like. Should we do them? Should we not do them? And ultimately, it's I'm all for that. I'm all for having more money, which means more energy. If we have, good partners who are interested in the WordPress ecosystem and helping that the whole community or the whole ecosystem move forward versus just, doing stuff and then losing control and doing things what's better for the business versus the entire ecosystem in general.
I notice you keep referring to it as North. Is that intentional, like North, and then there's going to be subset products, or it was just how you refer to it, North?
Yeah, so mostly I've just referred to it as North just for the sake of, losing a few syllables, but I think it's nothing to do with Woo dropping the commerce. North is not dropping the commerce.
I was kind of leading into that.
Just for the sake of speed, I guess.
I was joking before about, a few years ago, money was rampant. Of course, we were going through crazy times we still go through crazy times across the globe, but the pandemic brought a lot of money, a lot of interest, a lot of attention into the WordPress space, pre-AI, of course, or pre-commercial AI. How has the landscape shifted since you started? Or actually, let me start with this question instead. When did you start developing North Commerce?
Yeah, so it was the end of 2021, around fall or November, so almost like to the day 2 years ago around this time. Me and Dima, a developer of mine who I've worked with for years, he's based out of the Ukraine, we built a prototype, and then the last 14 days of the year in December, we launched like a lifetime deal. Hey guys, who's interested? We've got a lot of feedback that people are interested in something like this. Are they willing to pay for it? And so we did a little lifetime deal sale, and it did really well. We did like $50,000 in 14 days. And we're like, okay, so the small little Facebook groups and community members that have told our friends, like, people are interested in this. Let's start getting serious about it. So then January 2022, that's when we okay, cool. So let's figure out how we want to architect this. What does it look like in the context of WordPress? We want it to be built natively. We don't want it, this isn't our own SaaS. We want it to be like a native WordPress plugin that everyone owns their own data and all that stuff. And so just over the year, we've kind of iterated over what's going to work and what's not, and tested some things, and then kind of come to where we're at today.
The interest in money that was being poured into WordPress a few years ago was, well, it was great for my business in terms of reporting on it and, having podcast interviews, writing WordPress news. Obviously, things started to dry up a little bit. I started to see that effect happen. Pandemic, everyone wanted their website. I used to be an agency owner, ran an agency for a decade. I had people that I hadn't spoken to in 15 years knocking on my door saying, hey, Matt, I need to sell gift cards. Can you set my website up? It's, hey, man, I told you to set that website up about 20 years ago. I don't know why you waited, why you didn't do it, all this other stuff. Pandemic brought a lot of attention and all that stuff. A lot of no code, the boom of no code, and all these little sort of insular apps or siloed apps that do these specific things, or big apps like a Webflow. Recently in the Twitter sphere news about raising their prices, it's, hey, what did you expect was going to happen when you're on these platforms? What I'm getting at here is, when you started North Commerce, was there, no pun intended, was there a North Star of commerce aside from Woo that you were looking at? Were you thinking about doing it differently, going that SaaS route? And why attach yourself so closely to WordPress?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my main thought was I've built, hundreds of WooCommerce stores and Shopify stores, mainly kind of hung out in those two platforms. I've worked with, with BigCommerce and even Wix, so I've kind of seen those bigger players. When it came to some of my biggest stores that I've ever built and managed, that the $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a year plus, were built with WordPress and WooCommerce. And so I had seen, I like working with WordPress because I have control of everything. And so I can optimize, or I could take away, I can add whatever I needed. And so it was a great opportunity for me to learn what would work versus working with Shopify or stuff. So Shopify is a wonderful platform. They do a lot of stuff out of the box, but then there's some limitations. And then, can I convince the client to go to Plus so I can customize a little bit more? And so kind of you're at the mercy of what the platform offers. So when it came to WordPress, I've always been just a WordPress fan. And so when we decided to build North Commerce, I wanted to build it with WordPress because of the evolution and the state that WordPress was currently in. And so this was say 2 years ago, we officially decided to do it. And I'm like, okay, cool. So the block editor's coming up. I've been messing around with that. it looks promising. And then I met with another person, Jonathan Wold. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. Maybe some of your listeners are. He sort of started to bring up the block editor a little bit more, and so I started to do a deeper dive into that. And so then I started to capture the whole vision of the block editor, and then started to dive into the implementations and saw how fast it was and how flexible it was and how easy it was to build with that. And I'm thinking, oh, I could build WooCommerce as like a block editor first solution. And I'm pretty confident I could make the fastest and easiest e-commerce solution on the internet with that pair. So it was like, so then it became like this, oh, I love WordPress, so let's build a plugin, that'd be cool. To, I think actually, because I'm building on WordPress, I can build the best solution that exists on the internet, which is interesting. And so that's kind of how it's evolved. And then like why because originally I was thinking like, oh, I could start on, like my actual thought, this is like summer of 2021. I'm like, I could start small on WordPress, and then we could go to a SaaS model. I could be a separate platform, and it's less infrastructure to build on WordPress. I could just build a plugin. I don't have to worry about the backend stuff. It's all done, as is. And then as we started to build and get into everything, I'm like, that's not the answer. Actually, building inside of WordPress natively is going to be the reason why WooCommerce is the fastest, best e-commerce solution out there.
Looking at, well, I'm on northplugins.com, but there's a banner at the top that says there's a new site, northcommerce.com. When I was talking about the no-code scene and maybe who your North Star was, it's because your pricing model, for one, we'll get to that in a moment, but the presence of your website, the branding, definitely doesn't feel like the typical WordPress brand. It definitely feels to me like this is maybe no-code experience coming into the WordPress space. Nothing wrong with it. I actually like to see something different than like what a lot of us sort of put brands and stereo in the WordPress space, copy, but borrow, I guess is a better word for it. And it really had me thinking, like when I was doing some deep research, I did use the product, I tried it out. We'll get to that in a moment as well. And I started to think, wow, they are going to come in and probably go to a SaaS. And I'm glad you said what you said, because I think a lot of folks coming into the space go, WordPress is a great springboard. And it is for me to, start here, jump to the next level. And a lot of people think once I get out of this WordPress phase of my product life, I'm going to have, smoother sailing in the SaaS space. Not always the case. When you were building sites with Shopify, did you like that experience better than what you were doing with WordPress? Was there something there that said, yeah, at the time Shopify was really good and WordPress was a little clunky for me? Did you ever experience that?
Yeah, there were times. That sort of like depended also on the client's budget. So, certain budgets, gave us some luxuries in building, tools and other implementations on WordPress with WooCommerce that made life easier in the long run. Whereas like building with Shopify sort of right out of the gate was a little bit more simplified. Like their infrastructure is just, there's not one way to do it, but there was, sort of one way to get the whole job done. And then they did some of the heavy lifting when it comes to checkout and things like that.
Yeah.
And, weight calculations and shipping profiles and all that kind of stuff. So there are some luxuries when it comes to working with Shopify as well. But then it's okay, cool. This is wonderful. And then the client comes in and goes, hey, I really want, let's say, subscriptions. Like we want to offer subscriptions. And you're like, okay, cool. I guess we could build that custom, or you could use like a tool, another SaaS product that Shopify has. And, those started at $199 a month. And so then you jumped into that world where it's like, whereas with WooCommerce, I could build a subscription, add-on for a lot cheaper and just integrate with Stripe directly, and it's all good. And so that's kind of the difference.
Friend of the show, Jordan Gall, formerly of CartHook. So there was big partnership with Shopify, and for all of the faults that the community gives to, let's say, Automatic and Matt Mullenweg, rewind about 5 years ago, I'm sure you saw this, like everyone loved Shopify. They wanted to be a partner. They wanted to be in the partner portal. They were like, hey, everything's Shopify. It's so glorious here. Everyone was like rejoicing when they were doing fulfillment at Shopify. Oh my God, like we're all going to be one big happy platform. And it seems like the chips really started to fall over the course of the year. As the economy got tighter, so did the relationships and the costs of a platform like Shopify. Jordan Gall, exited not too happily. I'll link up the podcast episode where he really broke that down. A lot of people loved Shopify, criticized WordPress. A lot of people love WordPress, criticize Shopify. But these platforms, Shopify, Webflow, eventually Twitter, Facebook now wants to charge people for access, right? Because their ad dollars are probably tightening up, costs rising everywhere. They're like, okay, let's just squeeze the consumer. It's just happening across the board at all of these platforms. And I feel like the open source world, those of us in the WordPress space, be like, hey man, we've been saying that for years. We've been telling you that for years. If you go to woo.com today, they just recently rebranded. You start looking at plugin pricing. It's just priced in a monthly, I think, or an annual fee. Let's talk about your price model. Your price model, I'm going to northcommerce.com, clicking on the pricing tab. Right now, you're running a 60% off sale. For Core, it's $99 a year. Pro, $475 a year. Enterprise custom pricing. And I'm sure you're getting some people scratching their head say, well, why can't I just download this for free? Why can't I just use this? Talk to us about your business model, the annual price points, the maybe higher price points to get started than, let's say, free with Woo.
Yes, that's a good question. So we want everyone to... So here's how we wanted to position ourselves in the WordPress space in general. We want to be another option for e-commerce in WordPress. WooCommerce, I've had a great relationship with WooCommerce. I've talked to Paul at WordCamps, and WooCommerce is great. I've built very successful businesses with WooCommerce, and so we're not here to build something to replace WooCommerce at all, or Woo.
And even if you were, it's okay.
I don't mean to sound like
you don't have to apologize.
But the distinction kind of helps paint the picture of why we're pricing how we're pricing. So we have our InstaWP free demo previews where you can spin up a demo store for and test out all of the features of NorthCommerce for free. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to not only be the premium solution, but we wanted to be the all-in-one solution. So you could install NorthCommerce on your site, and you could build a full and complete e-commerce store with nothing else. You would use your favorite page builder or block editor theme or whatever, and from there you could do everything you want. And so in order to do that, we're pricing ourselves sort of similar to like how a SaaS would, or starting at $99 a year, and that gives us the cash flow to keep everything all in one. And so these are for fundamental features as well. So I want to make it clear too that we are going to be the all-in-one solution out of the box. You can build an e-commerce store with just NorthCommerce, nothing else, and your favorite page builder. But these are all going to be fundamental features. We still want to give like the WordPress ecosystem and community the opportunity to build third-party plugins and sell those and have that sort of marketplace ecosystem as well. So the main goal has always been for NorthCommerce to be fast, scalable, and easy to use and ready to use directly out of the box. And so we felt a fair price for that would be $99 a year. And if you're not ready to you're not ready to purchase NorthCommerce, or you're not sure it can do all the features you need, well, spin up a free InstaWP site and test it out for yourself, and all the features are there ready for you to try out. And then when you're ready to build your store, you could purchase a license and go from there.
And then the next plan up is $475 a year. You start getting into customer segmentation, 5 shipping locations, email notification builder, a bunch of more advanced features. Talk to me about the line item. Put you on the hot seat for a little bit. Talk to me about the line item and the features. On the $99 plan, you can go up to $100K a year in online sales. $475, you can go up to $500K in online sales. Is this half SaaS, half plugin? How are you tracking that number? And have you had any pushback on maybe the limitations of a store? And look, I don't think that $99 is a lot of money for generating $100,000 a year. I don't think $475 is a lot of money for generating $500,000 a year. But the the nuances of the WordPress world and maybe a lot of beliefs of people are like, hey, I like WordPress, I like plugins because I can go and do my own thing, make $1 zillion, and I don't have to move, even if it is pocket change compared to the revenue that I'm building. So talk to me about those two line items and maybe the feedback you've received from customers.
Yeah, so this is a good question. And this is something that like we want to experiment with too. So I think that fundamentally, I think that there's a lot of really, really great plugins in the WordPress ecosystem that are undervalued. And, like we live in this open source world and I think that's great. I think this is great. So this is one of our experiments that we wanted to see how like the WordPress world reacts to a pricing model like this. In general, so we have about 1,000 or 2,000 people in our Discord community who interact with us pretty often. And so this was something that we had mixed reviews on. And it was almost like a 50-50. Where people were like, what's up with the 100K a year and I have to price things differently. And, I might make 100,000 a year, but it's not all profit. So what should I do? And so there's some good conversations here about this type of model. And one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to enable a better customer support experience for businesses that are starting to hit those tiers of revenue. And so it's okay, not only, you have the features to go and build a $100,000, $500 to $1 million a year business, but what does that look like for North Commerce? What's the relationship look like between North Commerce and that store that's doing that revenue? Do you just want to, and this might be a good question to ask your audience too, like is that something that you guys want to just keep handling on your own, or do you want our team of experts to be more connected to you at that next tier to to help you get to the next the next million or the next 10 million or whatever, and are you wanting to rub shoulders with other stores that are also doing that much revenue? And so it was less like pricing things out in terms of tiers, a CRM would with the amount of emails you have or something, so that we could make more money as a business, but more like we want to be able to deliver a lot more value to you and have you be a part of a specific group of North Commerce community members that then can help you go to the next level, that the 500 to a million, the 1 million to 5 million, the 5 to 10 million. And so I think in general our pricing is fair right now in terms of those tiers, but more than anything it's like, how do we want that relationship to look when you're hitting those numbers? And so I know Woo does a good job of this with some of their enterprise people, but I know some, I've run 3 stores that have been doing $2 million a year in revenue, and like Woo never reached out or we never heard anything from, Woo. And not like we needed to, but, if we could collaborate with them and their experts and other stores doing that, it could have been very helpful.
My opinion, not that you asked, but
I'd love to hear either way.
For me, it's easy and this is probably why you get into the e-commerce space, why most folks focusing on the e-commerce space is because generally it's an easy transaction. You can say, I'm going to build this thing for you. You're going to make money from it. So obviously it's easy for me to negotiate, a cut, right? Versus somebody who's just, I'm going to sell you a form plugin. It's just contact forms. You're not doing any transaction with it on your side. So it's not as valuable to you as it is to the person who might be using it for a donation form or selling a simple product. What I would do is,
right.
I think everyone at this day and age, my God, 2023, after going through COVID and just seeing how fragile commerce is in general, offline and online, how fragile the internet still is, that it's easy for me to say $475 a year, no sales limitations, even though that might be a virtual ceiling, but pay us $5,000 a year for this extra support fee. You don't need it? Totally fine. But I think anyone who's doing business in that space or at that price point can easily make that shift to say, I need an expert or I need that white glove approach to this solution because I don't want to lose my job, as this is going to not come off right, but as the middle tier marketing person in my company or commerce person in my company, and I have VPs above me, and like, Jesus, I want this alternative here. It's super easy to use. Woo is just too complex. I want this thing, but $5,000, I'll hold my hand a little bit and help me implement these things, within reason or support or something like that. So I think
Yes,
like the
that makes
virtual
sense.
barrier might be an issue for some folks in the WordPress space. But this is also sort of like the thread of me asking you all about all these questions about commerce, years ago, Shopify, branding and stuff like that. I built a site for a guy you might know, Andrew Udarian from E-commerce Fuel. I don't know if you ever came across him. He has a massive community of e-commerce folks. And I think still today, I built him this website, I don't know, a decade ago. He has this community of e-commerce people that it's still Shopify to my knowledge. And I remember a few years ago when he first discovered WooCommerce, he was like, I don't know what this little homebrew plugin is over here, this little e-commerce plugin known as WooCommerce. Andrew, it's bigger than Shopify. This is me telling him years ago. But you don't see it that way. You just see it as like this geeky thing a hobbyist has to build to do this thing. You look at Shopify and go, corporate infrastructure, branded, it's all in one spot. I'm going to go attack this. On your enterprise tier, do you have anyone sort of like, oh, what's this? Why do you have to be associated with WordPress? Do you feel like you might be better off if it were standalone when you start to have those enterprise conversations? I'm only asking because I know the branding of WordPress and WooCommerce is already complex. When you start to tell people, hey, put your business online with me and I'm using WordPress, some people may be like, I don't really know about you yet and you're using WordPress. I feel a little too shy to do something like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that WordPress's reputation when it comes to enterprise is pretty good, but not a lot of people necessarily know the enterprise WordPress, the White House website and, Vox moving over to WordPress, like all these really big brands that are using WordPress at an enterprise level. So I think that the WordPress one is an easy one to overcome. And with good hosting partners, that makes it even easier too. So, like when it comes to our enterprise customers, we have hosting partners that help us accommodate them and support them at that scale. But when it comes to our brand, especially this early on, I think that it is pretty challenging to close a deal on like a new platform like WooCommerce, like that's only been around for, pretty much like a year or less in terms of like production ready. And so yeah, I think pairing with WordPress and being able to show other enterprise solutions or enterprise businesses that are built with WordPress can make it easier for us to segue people over. But I do think the most challenging part is going to be like showing hey, like we can help support you and we can help you scale and we're stable and we can handle anything that comes our way because we're so new. Like our reputation is still growing.
Last few questions here. We said at the top of the show that you're not trying to be a replacement for WooCommerce, though maybe an alternative, a more simplified alternative. It was definitely easy to use, easy for me to understand. I used the InstaWP site, demo site, when I first saw your tweet a couple weeks ago. How are you going to manage, if at all, that simplicity? I think that's one of the biggest challenge in product development is a lot of us start out as minimalistic, super focused. You start building up that reputation, you start building up clientele, everyone loves you for it, and then all of a sudden you become Notion. And it's like, what is this thing in front of me, right? Or Active Campaign. Yes. It was just like, hey, this is awesome. Fields and automation, totally get it. It's cool. I can send emails. And then Active Campaign became launching a NASA rocket ship, right? I was just like, I don't even understand what this is anymore. How are you going to keep that minimalistic approach, if at all, as the product evolves?
Yeah, so this is a greght question. This is something that we've spent a lot of time thinking about. So when it comes to WooCommerce, and like I had mentioned earlier, like all the fundamental features, or what we would define as a fundamental feature for an e-commerce store, is going to be ready for you out of the box. Anything extra, and even that we develop or third-party developers develop, will all be available to activate within our integrations area of the plugin. So if you installed WooCommerce, then you go to integrations. Right now, you'll see a small list of integrations, but in the future, what you'll see is a ton of different integrations and add-ons that will help enhance the WooCommerce experience. And so, someone who is, wants to sell, jewelry, who's, just getting started, might just want WooCommerce core and those fundamental features, and they can do that. Or if imagine someone who's doing, $5 or $10 million a year selling supplements that wants, subscriptions and one-time purchases and, a custom, account area and all sorts of different things, you'd be able to activate those add-ons to give you those features inside of WooCommerce. And so you'll be able to have some modularity within WooCommerce. And then we have a set standard of how things are implemented so that things stay organized and things work together, even third-party apps, so that there's no conflicts, no confusion, and hopefully maintain this simplicity to North. But you can still be as advanced as you'd need for your business.
I'm not a developer, but for those who are developers, this is like a complete React app inside WordPress. What's it built on?
Yeah, so this is all native PHP, JavaScript, HTML. So there's no React other than, I guess, our Gutenberg blocks. But so everything's just rendered server side with PHP, and then we've built like our own. So if any developers listening, we've built sort of like our own ORM or standardized way of querying data and getting data and posting data. And then all of that's baked into one entity, is what we call it. And so anyone that wants to access WooCommerce data, they can do so through that. Anyone that wants to create an add-on for WooCommerce as well, they can hook into that as well. And then they also inherit all of our filtering rules and our security rules. So it makes all these third-party plugins work together really, really nicely with WooCommerce, so that if a random plugin that was developed by someone in India and then another random developer from the Ukraine develops a plugin for WooCommerce, the way our ORM is set up, as long as they follow our documentation, those will work together perfectly. And you could query those. So there's no separation of data. I know when you're working with WooCommerce, sometimes you have this random developer uses custom post types, and this one uses a custom database table, and then if you want those to talk to each other, you have to do your own custom thing for that, and it gets complex. And so our system,
classic editor. I'm just just really trying to wrap my head around that one.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're a lot simpler when it comes to that. And then for all the developers out there that want to work with WooCommerce, we have a standardized way to do that, and it makes life a lot easier.
Notice at the bottom in the footer, there's North Fulfillment coming soon.
Yeah, so this is an interesting idea that we've had for some of our enterprise clients who have a low SKU count and then a large monthly order volume, where we would offer fulfillment for those people. So you integrate directly with North, we fulfill your orders, and depending on where you're at right now, it would just be in the States, but this is still sort of coming soon.
Interesting. Ambitious. I love it. Northcommerce.com. What's coming up next? I know I got my Black Friday sale already on November 7th. Can't believe it. What else you got going on?
Yeah, so we have our Black Friday sale we're doing where we've partnered with Gutenberg as well. This is a new WordPress accelerator and we've partnered with some other products to launch a really, really great Black Friday deal. And we have some hosting partners that are also launching that with us as well. So that's exciting. We're launching our our first WooCommerce theme called Commerce One. And this is sort of a preview of what you can see of that is on the Instant WP version. And so that'll be our first block editor block. And then now we're working with some people as they're building their stores, optimizing WooCommerce as we start to run into different bugs and things like that. And then so next year is the plan to launch like a full version of WooCommerce, optimized, super, super fast. And if you haven't already used a block editor theme or builder like Cadence or something, I would highly recommend doing that and building a store with WooCommerce in the block editor. You'll have a much faster experience than you would with any Shopify or Webflow or Wix store, and also with WooCommerce as well. So I'd recommend everyone trying out the free preview on northcommerce.com.
That's right. Check it out, northcommerce.com. Kelley, thanks for hanging out today.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for today's episode. Get the weekly newsletter at thewpminute.com/subscribe. Want to support the show and join a Slack group filled with WordPress professionals like you? Talk about the news, share your WordPress business content, and network with others. Head to thewpminute.com/support and get access to our group. Support the show for as little as $5 or more if you feel we provided more value. Thanks to our pillar sponsors, Pressable, Bluehost, and OmniSend. Thanks to our Foundation Plus sponsors, WP World, Image SEO, and Hostinger. Thanks to all of our annual supporting members and you, the listener. Without your support, the WP Minute wouldn't be possible. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.